Why is it important for allies to go on exposure trips? For a few reasons. One is that we understand the concrete conditions that are happening in the Philippines, and that we have a better understanding of what the people are going through, what are the causes, and how are folks resisting, right? And how do we come along and resist with them in solidarity? The second reason that it's important is because it shows folks in these regions in the Philippines that their issues are not isolated to just these regions in the Philippines, that their stories are not going to just stay there, but that their stories are traveling and they're going and people are going to hear about them. And so I remember when I was on my Expo in 2013, somebody telling me like, you're going to go back and you're going to tell this story, right? You're going to go back and you're going to tell my story. And saying, yeah, of course we're going to tell those stories, right? And it's this idea that we don't want the stories to just stay here. We don't want it to just be us resisting here, but this needs to be resisted on a global scale. This is not okay, right? And of course, it has to be the Philippines and the Filipino people who lead that resistance. But they also want the help of the international community. They also want the support and the solidarity of the international community in decrying these human rights violations that are occurring and in saying that there needs to be a real change, right? And that comes through being with them and through reporting back from the experiences that we've had there, right? So I just recently finished reading War Against All Puerto Ricans, and in that book, the author talks about how the Puerto Rican nationalists felt so desperate, felt so much like nobody cared what was happening on the small island of Puerto Rico because nobody was paying attention. The international community was caring about the war that was happening in Europe, about the war crimes that had happened in Europe, about the human rights violations that were happening in Europe, and meanwhile, people were being tortured, people were being killed in Puerto Rico, and nobody was saying anything, right? And so there was this desperation, this feeling that nobody cared. And so what's important is for allies to be able to go and to say, no, the international community is watching. This is not something that is just going to be isolated to this region. We still see what's going on, and we're going to say that it's also wrong. We're going to stand with the Filipino people in denouncing this. And so that's a really important and key part of the work that we have to do and why we should be going on an exposure trip. The third reason is that this movement is strong. It has been around for a very long time, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned from it. And so I think that in particular, it's important for allies to also go to learn about organizing, to learn about resistance, to learn about what that looks like and how it's done in the context of the Philippines, and understanding that no, it's not copy-paste in every place that we go, right? But there are lessons to be learned from a struggle that has been able to last for so long, and that has thousands that are part of it, right? And so I think that that's also a very important reason to go on Expo for allies, particularly allies who are from other oppressed nations.
They can't keep what they stole from the art, and they love to see beef cause it throws us apart. More fire for the people, more peace for the people, more life for the people.